element is, if you can afford it in year 1, what about year 3 and 4 and 5? You have to still be able to support the program down the road. So the money has to be right. Now, I'm not one to say that's that's not a hill I'll die on, because if it's good enough, you go get the money. If it's good enough for kids, and it's within you go figure that out, Madam or Ms. Superintendent. You got to figure that out. There are angels all around us that'll help you, right? But just from a fiscal standpoint, I'm sure the board members will understand this. You have to be fiscally responsible, and so that's the third thing. You just picked your curriculum right there. Maybe you have 2 you got to wrestle with, but you don't need a month. You don't need a the trial run or whatever we call it. You don't need the year-and-a-half-long trial run and the committee and that you already know the answer to before you get. Come on, stop playing, right? Does it work? Do you have time to do it, and can you afford it? That's it. It's not an ideological problem. And let me tell you something. If balanced literacy works and all kids are reading through balanced literacy, then do balanced literacy. I'm not up here saying science reading. I'm about what works. The only reason I'm up here passing out cards about district is because it works. When you go from last in the state to first in the state, we should know about that, right? That's the only reason. You have to choose good curriculum. Who is coaching the coaches? Who is coaching the principals? Somebody's got to coach the principals. Leadership matters at the site level. And you can't let principals just be out there like a weed. They have to know there's a bottom line to this thing. Right? So that's school administration. Right? You have to coach the coaches, you have to pick good materials. And when I say coach the coaches, I mean you have to coach them hard. Principals should be coached harder than teachers. They're the ones, they're middle management. And I hate to say it, but middle management, that's just kind of what it is. Those jokers got to run. I was one. They got to run. Until they figure this thing out and do it efficiently, they should really ever be in the office too much. If you go to the school every time and the principal's in the office, you got a problem. If you go to school every time and there's an office full of children because they're acting up because they're bored, that's a problem. As a principal, I was in classrooms. I would have 10 or 15, when I first got to the school, I had 10 or 15 kids coming with me. We're going to do these observations. You can act up if you want to, but you coming with me. I'm not staying in this office because I'm an instructional leader. This teaching and learning is my business. This is my job. So you want to come in here, guess what? You're going to come with me too, and everybody going to see you. All the kids, parents, and teachers are going to be in your business. They're going to looking at your mom crazy when she come pick you up. The real talk. And all of a sudden, slowly but surely, it goes from 15 to 13 to 11 to 9 to 3 to the last little holdout who want to act up all the time. But it's going to get smaller because kids are not crazy. They may play crazy sometimes, especially if we let them. They're not crazy. They know who they can get away with what with. All right? So for the system level people, you have to manage and coach your coaches. You have to have some expectations of how much observation and feedback teachers will get. I'm not talking about evaluation. You have to make sure they have materials that are usable and that have evidence of success. Done with that. Policy, you guys are actually in a good spot. If you look at Excel & Ed's website where they have policy state by state, Connecticut's actually, I think, got 14 or 15 of the 18 policies. Now, some of them haven't been fully implemented yet, or it's for future, but there's been some legislators somewhere working on it because somebody's working on here because it's clear. And that policy makes a difference. Look, New York's got 2. I just came back from New York. I was like, y'all, I'm here to tell you need to get your act together. I'm here to tell you legislators that I don't know what you're doing in closed session or legislative session and in education committee, but there's policies that should be on the books that aren't, and our kids are dying because of it. Tell them straight up. I can't tell that to y'all. Somebody out here is working hard. It's not 18 out of 18, but you in the game. You in the game if the other things are in place. Does that make sense? I know the money and you also do the property tax. I know it's awesome stuff, but you in the game. There are some places that are not even in the game. Okay, all right. I see y'all getting tired of me. Look, I appreciate you. I have some cards here I'm going to give out. They're not my business cards or anything like that. I mean, I have some of those too. But these cards, say one thing right
Yes,
quick?
sir.
Right
Yeah.
quick. So, Madam Superintendent, let me just say this. I have met folks all around the country. I don't mince words. You all are fortunate to have a superintendent who's actually willing to be honest about some of this stuff. I've been reading. There were a couple of board members too. I don't know if they're still there or not. But usually, you have to have board members like that to get a superintendent like that.
That's right.
Right? So you have a chance because you have someone in the seat who is willing to make this a priority and be vulnerable about it. That is not common.
That's right.
I'm trying to tell you, that's
Thank
not
you.
common. You know, so and I don't just throw roses just to throw roses and play nice. Like I mean that. So I wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir. And it's not common, and it's certainly not a miracle. So let's get started. So The Right to Read was first released in 2023, Festival Circuit, directed by Jenny McKinsey, executive producer LeVar Burton. Remember, Butterfly in the Sky, I Can Go Twice as High. Yep, I grew up that way. It spotlights America's literacy crisis through the eyes of our very own Kareem Weaver, rookie first grade teacher Sabrina Causey, and two families, the Olivares family and the Williams family from Richmond and Oakland, California. We're going to see some excerpts, and after the first set of excerpts, I'm going to invite you up to introduce yourself. So let's roll the tape.
Every 8-year-old can read independently.
We need to prepare our children to read and succeed in school so that no child is left behind.
But the way that children are usually taught how to read does not line up with decades of evidence on how they actually learn to read.
Let's give our kids that chance.
The greatest equalizer in the world is education.
I have taught every grade level, taught high school, middle school, elementary school, and there are a few through lines, one of which is the kids can't read. 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 The kids can't read California, arguably the most progressive state in the union, social justice minded. But when I first started teaching in Oakland, there were only 2 kids in my class of 35 who could read.
Larry, say what's up to the camera, Larry. All right, now, Larry, take it from the top. What does that say?
Larry ran to the cat.
My man Larry. I'm gonna say this right now on tape. My man Larry just read his first sentence by himself, and I'm very, very proud of him. And whoever sees this videotape, I'm hoping I can get his mother to see it too. I want them to know that Larry can read. And Larry will read, won't you?
Yeah.
Right on.
The question is, what becomes of those kids who don't have a foundation in reading? I can tell you what happens to them. Now, Lord works in mysterious ways. Kids, can overcome all kinds of challenges. However, illiteracy is the pipeline to prison. It's also the pipeline to homelessness. It's the pipeline to unemployment and depression. And there are publishing companies that sell popular curriculum that do not teach our children to read, making millions of dollars. From the day I set foot in Oakland, I realized that everything starts with literacy. Everything starts with reading. Science, math, history, you name it. If you can't read, you can't access anything else.
Reading is the basis upon which all other academic learning is built. So reading is basically going to determine so many things about how the rest of your school career goes. We have a lot of people who struggle to read. And it's kind of amazing if you look at just the basic data, like why aren't we screaming and yelling about this?
There is one test that is given across all of America called the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP. It's the only test that we have that is given consistently across the nation. We've been giving it for decades, and what it shows is, unfortunately, mostly unchanged. We are failing about 2/3 of our children.
NAEP is not a perfect test, but NAEP is telling us something essential. The data reveal a truth that we cannot ignore.
So let's just take a look at the idea of just basic. Who can read at a basic level? Well, we are in a situation where like 1/3 of our 4th graders cannot even read at a basic level. That is a lot of kids. And it is even worse, way more shocking, if you look at kids of color. Nearly half of kids of color in 4th grade cannot read at a basic level.
And then I'm wondering what was wrong with me. Maybe it's my family. Maybe I'm too poor. Maybe I'm too black, too brown. Maybe it's because I speak a different language. Maybe because they went through too much. There's too much trauma. Maybe it's me. Parents have no idea. The root of the problem is that children are being taught in a way that is not working. If it was a minority issue, then all these soccer moms wouldn't be spending $20,000, $30,000 to send their kids to private tutoring because they didn't learn how to read in school. Kids of all races are struggling to read. The issue is who has the resources to deal with it.
So what we have in this country are a lot of well-to-do kids who are getting the help they need, and what happens is we just don't see, in some ways, the problem with the instruction because of that.
Shit.
I'm trying to enlist everybody's help because it's not just my community. It's the suburbs. It's the rural areas. It's cities all across the country. And when parents send their babies to school, I want them to ask teachers, principals, school boards, how are you teaching reading? Is it aligned with the research consensus and the science?
Thank you. Was that it? That was the clip? Good. Yes. Good. Well, thank you so much, and you know, thank you for setting that up so brilliantly. And I'm now going to invite the panelists to join us here so we can start our reflections together. So if you could just come up. I'm not going to introduce you. You're going to introduce yourselves. Kareem taught me earlier, say your name and say it proudly because you have that gravitas when you say your name. So thank you, Kareem, for teaching me that. Because I said I was Steve H. earlier. I had a thing that says Steve H. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
So let's start here.
Sure. So good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Russell. I'm the state treasurer here in Connecticut. Happy to be here.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. I am Dory Dumas, proud president of the Greater New Haven NAACP.
Good evening, everybody. Buenas noches. I am Dr. Madeline Negrón, the very proud superintendent of schools of the New Haven Public Schools.
Great. Well, welcome. And we're going to have a sort of an easy flow and easy going conversation. I'm going to ask you specific questions. And Kareem, I don't know whether you knew this, but you are my co-host. So if at any time you want to chime in or chime out, you just let me know. But let's start with you, Dory, if I may call you Dory.
Yes, please.
Yes. So Dory, you know, Connecticut has one of the largest, what they call achievement gaps in the nation. Why is this happening? And what systemic factors, both inside and outside schools, continue to drive these inequities?
Thank you for raising this important issue. First, let me also officially welcome my fellow NAACPer, and thank you for the great work you're doing around this important issue. I have my NAACP officers and others in the audience. 2 years ago, we did part one, and we had my education chair at that time, Dr. Camille Cooper, who was a strong advocate for education. Unfortunately, we lost her a few months ago, so I am filling in because education is a civil rights issue, and it's something that we've advocated for forever in the NAACP. The achievement gap in Connecticut, which is among the largest in the nation, is a complex and deeply rooted problem. Data consistently shows disparities in test scores, graduation rates, college attendance, access to advanced coursework among students of different races. The achievement gap has increased, and way too many students, especially our Black and brown, are not reading. This persistent inequity is driven by systemic factors, both inside and outside the schools. Inside the education system, one of the biggest issues which we heard about is underfunding of our schools, especially in marginalized communities. Disparities in resource allocations and lack of culturally responsive teaching contributes significantly. Outside the classroom, as you heard, systemic issues such as persistent poverty, neighborhood disinvestment, food insecurity, housing segregation, limited access to quality health care, and early childhood education further hinder equity. Addressing these disparities requires a comprehensive approach that includes equitable funding, community investment, policy reform, and ongoing efforts to eliminate structural inequalities. We must work collaboratively with policymakers, educators, parents, and the community members to ensure that every student has access to the opportunities and the resources necessary to succeed. Based on some of the information we heard, the main difference sounds to me like balanced literacy includes a mix of methods, while structured literacy uses clear step-by-step approaches. As we heard, there are some best practices out there. There are some successes, and this could help with the instruction and help with teaching students to read. This needs to start at early education. with a strong foundation in reading and literacy. It's important to bridge the gap and to ensure that all children get a real chance at a fulfilling education. We need to address the systemic racism and poverty as a tangible barriers to learning and future achievements. The NAACP's stance is and always has been, every student deserves access to great teaching, to resources, to assistance, and to be able to have the opportunities to succeed.
You know, you've talked about those inequities and how, you know, it's sometimes money helps us find the way, but it's tough to find our way to money sometimes, right? Especially when you're living in cycles of poverty that are not supported by the system. Right. So one of the things that we've heard throughout the film and throughout the evening is literacy as a civil right. What does this idea mean to you, and how should it shape the way that we act as communities?
Well, as you heard, from the very beginning, it has been a priority, and it is a true civil rights issue. The NAACP views education as the fundamental civil rights and one of the most important, arguing that systemic racism, as we said, creates inequity, and that students must have access to safe and high-quality, equitable education. We heard the greatest equalizer is a solid foundation in reading and literacy. If you can't read, as Kareem said in the documentary, you can't access much at all.
Thank you, Dory. Thank you. Thank you. You know, it occurs to me that we now for generations have been talking about closing opportunity gaps. We've been talking about what is the root of the problem. Is the school, the four walls of the school, the place where you find the answer? But we know that oftentimes these issues begin way before a child even enters a school building. And in fact, hunger insecurity and all the other insecurities that families are challenged with are some of those root causes. So we're going to cue the next part of our film, where we're going to talk about what happens early on and what are those early impacts that put families in a position and children in a position where they have to catch up to keep up. I was handed a script earlier, and I was told that if the video didn't work, that I was going to actually have to narrate. So thankfully, I think it's going to work.
Move it off. Put it in something that's structured, that's explicit, and that's direct, so our kids and our educators have an actual chance at success.
Too much. That's right. Too much. I like to eat apples and bananas. But today, eating bananas and strawberries. Strawberries. And bananas. Yes. Oatmeal. Just the little things that we do, like when we're making spaghetti, we're telling them that we're putting the noodles in the water, and then after the water starts boiling, so we pick them up and say, do you see the water boiling? And they say boil, you know, and I know when we talk to Ivy, she repeats everything we say, so that makes her vocabulary even stronger. She said she won't go to the library. We're gonna go to the library on Sunday.
We'll go to the library tomorrow. We'll zip you up. I definitely want to empower Ivy to make sure that Ivy is prepared to excel through school with early reading, early literacy, talking to her.
Can you turn to the next page? Wait, how many kids you see over here?
What?
One? Can you count? One.
No, it's a baby.
Where's the baby?
Right here.
Oh, that's a baby?
Yeah.
I thought that was a big boy. That's not a big boy.
That was me. Thank you for that. And, you know, it's remarkable. Some of the earliest work I remember that we did when the right to read was first a thing in the state of Connecticut was that we worked with parents and little ones. And I remember those moments where those fun things like storytelling and funny words and crazy words and words that just didn't make sense were really fun. And let's figure out what it all means. That connection and that empathy between parents and their kids, which built an early foundation for a love of literacy, that's really what we're seeing. So it's really powerful. And so I'm gonna turn now to Dr. Negron and Treasurer Russell. Dr. Negron, you know, you are no stranger to the challenges, of course, that a district presents to us and certainly presents to you as a leader. How can schools and families strengthen that early foundation, especially for multilingual and working families, because a lot of our families are working?
Well, again, first let me start by saying how fortunate and privileged I feel to be sitting in this panel. And
there you go. Yep.
okay, so a privilege to be here among this panel. And I want to just say how much I appreciated your words at the beginning. And as you were speaking, and I'm going to get to the family piece in a minute, everything that you said resonates. After spending 30 years in this field, in this state, one of the richest states in our country, I still believe is a matter of will. It is still a matter of will. And I'm still waiting. I am not losing hope, right? Because it's our job to continue to instill hope, because this is a social justice issue. And walking into the district in 2023, I made it very clear what the priority was going to be for me, and that was going to be literacy. And I know that because it stems from my lived experiences. And for those of us who grow up poor and see the struggle, we know that unless we have a solid education that is going to give us the opportunity to compete in this world, we're not going to break those cycles. So for me, it is not about the title. It's about the mission that I believe I've been on since the age of 10. as young children that enter our doors every day, parents at home, it doesn't matter what level of economics they come from, I still believe every parent wants their child to succeed. Every parent is sending us the best of what they have. They're entrusting us to support them in that work, especially when they are dealing with poverty, which was my case. So we have this responsibility to be able to truly partner with our families to get to that point. But it has to start, like you said, and I'm going to steal those quotes. Let's be honest about it. Let's not waste people's time, and let's call it for what it is. So the way that I call it is, in this amazing state, we have to be very honest and have the will to say we are prioritizing education, we are prioritizing literacy, because we're not where we need to be, and we're failing kids every single day. And when you speak about curriculum, for me, I don't speak about curriculum in that fashion. I know the whole process that the district went through before my arrival to arrive at HMH. I'm happy that we have instructional materials that are aligned to the science of reading. But I tell my administrators every day, it's not about the curriculum. It's about the teaching practices that we are going to own, and that we are going to say that we believe in those research-based practices, and that we're going to bring about fidelity of implementation every single day. And I so love when you said that it's all about preparation. Because I argue the science of reading is nothing new. We have always known about the 7 practices that get to the essence of teaching kids how to read. We have always known that. But I believe it starts with number 1, seeing every child that walks through our doors. That it isn't about skin color. It isn't about economic background. It isn't about the language they speak. Because they all bring their own talents. So if we are to start there, and that is why I started my entry in this district saying literacy, number 1, and ensuring that we see every child, because every child belongs. And they belong in our spaces. And until we are going to be committed to that, it has to start there. If we're ever going to have the chance to get at that transformation that you spoke about in Mississippi, racing from the bottom to the top. So my slogan is together, striving towards the next chapter of excellence. But that starts with the will and the belief that we have in the fact that we can do this for children. So if we see children, if we truly see them, and if in our classrooms we're adopting these practices that we are learning through the professional learning that we're affording, starting with our administrators, and I'm so glad you said that, followed by your teachers. And are we in classrooms every day? I have colleagues that say to me, "You're kidding, right?" I'm like, "What do you mean? You actually are in schools? You're actually in classrooms?" I'm like, "Yes." Because that is the work. The work is about the teaching and the learning. The work is about observing and being able to understand. For me, it's about identifying what are the resources that my teachers are going to need. What is the professional learning that they're going to need to make sure that they have everything that they need in their hands to be able to carry out the work they're asking them to do. Without those resources, without the professional learning, it cannot happen. As it relates to family, what I am saying to folks now is, now that we've gone through the training, that we have all now sort of like freshened up on what it takes to get a literacy, we cannot forget our families. And that I truly believe that we have resources at hand that come to us. Let me just pick one, Title I. We have Title I funding that comes into our district. And often we are doing all these events throughout this district. And I'm so appreciative of every energy and ounce that goes into going to those events. But what I'm saying is, it can't just be about an event. It truly has to be about how do we equip our families to do these single little things at home, like you saw in the video, that allows parents to begin the work of language and literacy even before the kids come to our pre-K classrooms. And that we need to own that as a responsibility. How can we leverage the little resources that we have, the time that we have, to ensure that we're equipping our parents to be able to do that? And I argue, simple little things like you saw in that video, talking to kids, questioning our kids, sounding out words so that our kids can repeat. That can happen in any language, because I'm not telling my parents, do this in English. No, you're going to do that at home in your native language so that you can interact with your child, you can build and strengthen that relationship, and just keep pouring language into your child in whatever language. When they come across our doors, they're going to be bombarded by English. It's going to transfer. The research is very clear. The transfer is going to be there, but we have to own that. How are we equipping our families to do these small little things that make a huge difference in the run? Are we there yet? Not there. Not there yet. So thank you that you spoke about patience. But I agree with you, and I do have one administrator in the room, and she knows. And my message is very simple. Yes, we're going to love our kids. We're going to love our kids. But that love needs to translate into how are we equipping them to compete? How are we doing that? And I say, and that starts with you. What's your plan? Show me your plan. Talk to me about your plan. Because we have to be in the trenches with our administrators. We can't just be in our offices doing God knows what my colleagues do. I don't know, not making any judgment. But I know I feel the weight of the job. Because for me, again, it's not a job, it's a mission. I hope I answer your question. Long-winded,
yeah.
but I just had to put all of that out there.
I appreciate you. And, you know, when you talk about central office being the new ivory tower, right, whether it's at the district level or at the state level, the fact that you leave that tower and you are in the classroom observing is so powerful. Radical belief in the kid, radical belief in the child's family, in the potential, but also a belief in the role that you have as a leader in investing in that infrastructure and making sure that they live to their potential. So thank you for that. And Mr. Treasurer, when we think about those investments, when we think about how it is that we all play a role in investment, something happened a few years ago when you were elected to this position. There was a radical shift in how it is that your office behaved when it came to families. And I think it's through your leadership. So I think part of what I wanted to ask you, how can we make the case for early literacy as one more of those investments, one that pays dividends in school readiness, workforce development, and economic strength?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and first, really honored to be here with this panel. This is a space where I wouldn't say this is my expertise, right? And I appreciate, Kareem, your comments in terms of addressing all of the educators in the room. One, just want to say thank you for all the work that you do. I am a product of public education, and it changed me and my family's life. And so I know the impact that education has on young people in our state, and the opportunity that is we have as a state in making those investments. There's no difference between me and so many of my friends that I grew up with, yet I know that I'm in a very different space than many of them, and some of that is just because of pure luck, but also some of the opportunities that I've had from people pouring into me. You know, I think when it comes to your question, One of the reasons we've been successful, I think, through the office in getting some bigger things done is really getting people to shift about how we think about these investments. So it's really easy for folks when we talk about a budget and we think about it from taxes and simply cost to people, when it's things that are important to a lot of folks that frankly already have a lot of power and opportunity in the state. And it's always looked at this really negative thing when you start talking about pouring into the people who have lacked opportunity and communities that have been under-resourced and historically. And I think one of the ways that we've really been able to drive programs like Connecticut Baby Bonds, right, that are about addressing wealth inequality here in Connecticut. The one, it's having really strong advocates and members of the legislature that care about communities and are putting the work behind it. Pat Billy Miller leading the charge on that, along with the BPRC. But it's also getting people to understand that it's not one or the other investment, right? We've landed where we have in terms of the challenges that the state's had because we've thought short-term in government. We didn't pay into our pension fund for 70 years because it wasn't going to disadvantage the person who was sitting in the chair at the time that that decision was made. Now we are at a point that we've hit a wall, and generations of people are going to pay the price for that. And we are right now sending billions of dollars that frankly should be going back into our communities, into our pension fund to dig out of that hole. But I look at programs like Connecticut Baby Bonds as an investment in people that is just as important as investments in our pension fund, because it's going to benefit everyone in the state as we are putting resources out there for more people in our state to have opportunity to pull themselves up in a meaningful way, to be able to more meaningfully participate in our economy long term, understanding that that is ultimately more beneficial to the state as a whole. As Kareem mentioned, there is a cost to this lack of investment or this lack of action as well. You look at it when the new early childhood education endowment, right? Thinking longer term, setting up this endowment that will ultimately be a sustainable way to fund affordable quality health care for all children, affordable quality early child care for all families in our state. That is an investment that we can make thinking longer term that is ultimately going to benefit the state as a whole. It's going to benefit our economy and employers and families in our state. And I think this is no different. I think the example that was used in Mississippi, and I think was really important to get away from this concept of it being a miracle, that took vision and long-term investment to get to the place that they wanted to get. And we can't think that we're going to put a Band-Aid over everything or throw a little extra money at something, one budget at a time, and fix major structural problems. I think we have to be realistic about breaking down barriers, not thinking about these issues in silos as our families are impacted and our students are impacted by much broader challenges. But we need to be way more intentional about making significant long-term investments to fix big long-term problems.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And, literacy, learning, the schoolhouse is not the beginning and the end of the conversation. And you have been telling us that from the rafters for years, and we have ignored you as a system, right? And what each of you has talked about is that there are no throwaway investors. Families matter, whether they're multilingual families or families who speak, or families who are struggling and working. But also those investments that we make around the family matter just as much. So that education is one of several pieces that come together to create the recipe for freedom. So as we cue this last clip, I want to invite everyone just to think about that moment, that aha moment that we talked about, right? That moment where everything just clicked. It happens for leaders, it happens for educators, it sure does happen for kids, but it happens for families as well who observe these phenomena with their children, and they are everlasting and enduring. So if we could see this last clip, then we'll come back.
It's about what works and what doesn't work. But I know that Lucy Calkins, the units of study is the district curriculum. We're balanced literacy curriculum. We're struggling with that.
You know, that curriculum, it just doesn't serve them at all. I ask them to do things that they're not able to do, and I was frustrated every single day. I went home and cried because the lesson plans were so complex, and I didn't know how to break it down to their level.
We're pushing at the NAACP. We're going to be engaging with the superintendent, chief academic officer, and basically we want to lay out a list of demands to say we need these changes. We want to make sure that teachers have stuff that works, that curriculum that actually works.
There have been a lot of studies from neuroscientists and cognitive scientists about how a child learns to read and what the brain does during this process. Many of us were born with the ability to hear, so children already have this phonological processing system where they're able to hear the sounds in words. Once children are able to hear sounds, we move to the occipital lobe. This is the area of the brain where students are now able to transform what they hear to what they see. Students are able to make out that these squiggly lines on a page are actually letters. Connecting those pathways from the phonological processing system, from students being able to hear those sounds and then being able to match those sounds to letters is not occurring in whole language classrooms because they're teaching memorization or they're teaching students how to look at pictures. It doesn't allow for those areas of the brain to connect with those pathways that they need in order for students to become skilled readers. There are 5 components of reading that the National Reading Panel has said are critical to learning how to read, which includes phonemic awareness, being able to hear the sounds in words, phonics, being able to match those sounds to letters, vocabulary, knowing these words, fluency, where students are able to read accurately and quickly, and then finally, comprehension. We now have to find meaning, which is the goal of reading.
There was this moment early on when we started doing this work together, or at least when I entered this space. And when I realized that we had all of this, we knew the science, we knew what needed to be done. We even had an implementation science that was put parallel to the brain science so that we knew how to implement. And you know, it always resonates and it never will leave me that it's decisions at the highest level and at the local level that mattered more than everything that we knew about literacy. So I want to ask each of you, if you could, if there was one thing that you could address, one policy, one attitude, one thing that just sticks to the imagination that is holding us back, what is it and why would you change it and how would you change it?
I'm going to continue to speak about the inequities that exist right now in the way that we're funding our schools in our state. And we have the haves and we have the have-nots. So I know that every line item carries basically a moral decision. But when we look, for example, at my district of New Haven, where I believe I have the right people who are committed to this work, that are pouring all of themselves to teach our kids, and where every budget, I have to barely have enough to just pay salaries and benefits. All the other pieces that are needed, like the curriculum resources that we're putting in the hands of our teachers, the high quality professional learning that they need to get and deserve, the people that are needed to provide that coaching. Corinne, I'm so glad you spoke about the fact that we need to invest in the professional learning that we give our administrators. We need to invest in the professional learning that we give our coaches, because those are the people supporting at the classroom level. I still, every budget season, I get asked, what do you need that for? Like, wipe out all of those pieces. That is not needed. So that's the dilemma. But if we had, at least in our state, which I believe we have a path forward, if we truly had the will to ensure that kids got an opportunity to get what they deserve in public education, and we would take the time to just revise our formula, update our formula, it would definitely not create, but at least tackle some of the inequities that we see right now that have to do simply with funding. So that's what I'm going to continue to argue for. We need at the legislative level to put pressure to ensure that we revise that formula and account for things that are not even assisting in it right now, such as the high number of students with special education need. That's not embedded in our formula. We don't even consider inflation. I don't know about you, but I know that gallon of milk now costs me $5. Okay? Everything has gone up. It doesn't even account for the high mobility that our children deal with. All of that speaks to housing, right? And the socioeconomic level that our kids are in. So I would still argue in our state, I would say it has to do with the way that we're funding education.
Thank you, Dr. Negron. And as I remember, I do learn and I do listen. And I remember you said earlier, Kareem, you said we're funding equitably, but we should be funding excellence. And that's what you're calling for, is funding excellence. So we need to think about how we rewrite those formulas so that we're actually investing what it takes. So thank you for that, Dory.
So first of all, based on the information that Kareem has gathered throughout the country, there are success happening in lots of districts. And we shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. We should be able to look at best practices and utilize them. And really, it shouldn't matter where your zip code is. Every child should have that access. But I did prepare what I want to say. But basically, there are some schools, even in our own districts, who are excelling. So we need to look at what are they doing? How is this happening? Why is it not happening in this area and it is there? But if I could change one policy in the next year to accelerate reading success for all children, it would be to guarantee universal access to high quality, evidence-based literacy instruction from early childhood throughout elementary school, starting with the foundation and the basics. This means investing in training teachers, providing resources for underserved schools, and ensuring no child falls behind due to the lack of support and resources. History teaches us knowing what works and what does not work is simply not enough. We must take action. From our community here in Greater New Haven to the broader society, making this change can ensure that every child starts strong, has the support they need, and is given the opportunity to read at above grade level. So not just that, we're going for excellence. It's a vital step towards creating a future where literacy is truly a right, not a privilege. Let's turn knowledge into action and give every child the foundation they need and deserve.
Thank you. Mr. Joshua.
Yes, I would say, I think along the lines of some of my earlier commentary, I think the mindset of thinking longer term as a state as we are making investments in people, I think is really critical. And I think, listen, there are things that we have done to move in the right direction. I mentioned, again, programs like Connecticut Baby Bonds, the Child Care Endowment, which is about making sure everyone has access, starting at the most important years, frankly, for the development of a child, right up front to quality education. But it can't stop there. And I think when you look at us as one of the wealthiest states in the country, we cannot be complacent about the fact that we have some of, yes, the best school districts in the country, but also some of those districts that are sitting right next to some of the poorest and worst performing. And that gap is not okay. And I think has been mentioned, we know that there are steps that we can take to move in the right direction on this front, and we need to have a real plan as to how we are going to tackle that. The other thing I would say is, looking at my role in terms of the economy and the financial condition of the state, my goal is that we should be ending poverty in Connecticut. That should be our big picture goal. And I know it sounds completely out of line, right? But the reality is we cannot continue to allow some of these conditions to persist and then expect that there's going to be some different result at the end of it. And so I'm not naive to what that takes. But if you think, as was mentioned, you have students are going into school right now that are confronting so many other, right? We can talk about the literacy piece, but just the experiences that kids are having, right? That their parents are having, working 60 and 70 hours a week at a job that doesn't pay enough for them to keep a roof over their head that they can afford, and then having the time to spend with their kids to go through much of what we're talking about, right? We have to be looking at all of these different issues and have a real strategic plan as to how we are going to tackle them. And I know that's not an easy task. I know that it is a long road, but I don't think that we should be shying away from that big picture goal of really building the future here in Connecticut where that is the reality.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, we do have, by the magic of television, we do have time for a couple questions, believe it or not. So I wonder, I know that several of you were handed little cue cards. Yes, sir.
Can I weigh in
Oh,
on
yes,
that right
please
quick,
wait.
though?
Yes, you may.
A couple of things. One is I just want to hit poverty right quick because I heard a lot about poverty. Poverty is real, obviously. I was, I think I was about 25 years old, and my mother and I were debating poverty. I'm not 25 anymore. But she was like, we were poor, don't you? I was like, what? No, we wasn't. She's like, yes, we were. I was like, Mom, what are you talking about? We wasn't poor. She said, baby, we were poor. That's what they call poor. We were arguing about this. I want to be very clear. It's important for us not to, I didn't know. I had friends. We ate, we might not always ate good, but we did eat something. We had love in the house. We had issues, don't get me wrong, we had issues. It was a tough time in the urban area, but I didn't know, these labels that we put on kids, like we gotta be careful, we just have to be careful with that. And don't sensationalize, I'm not accusing you, I'm just saying like, we get so comfortable talking about poverty. It's like we sometimes put a label on the kid, that's right. What are you talking about poor? And sometimes kids look at us like, wait a second, what are you talking about? Your life is a mess. You poor. There's different kinds of poverty. That's right. I may not have money, but I might be rich. You might be bankrupt in a lot of other ways. They have nothing to do with money. So I just want to name that. The other thing is, I have a quick little game to play with y'all. I did this. Anybody here, the thing we did last night? Anybody here? We finna do it again. You know what I'm about to say. All right, check this out. So I have a question. I'm gonna read some names of cities to you, and I want you to tell me, y'all already know, is this city, because I'm not from here, so I don't know what these names mean. If it's the hood, or if it's not the hood, okay? Now, I'm not going to debate with you about what the hood is and what the hood is not. If you know, you know. Right? If it's the hood, I want you to say the hood. If it's not the hood, I want you to say not the hood. All right? Okay. Very simple. You got it? All right, here we go. Let's be quick about it. Hamden. Milford. Oh, y'all know that one. Okay. All right. Shelton. Why y'all so quiet about it? what is it? Cheshire? What is it called? Cheshire.
Like the cat.
Not the hood. She said not the hood. All right, what about Trumbull? Trumbull. Okay. Southbury. Okay, just a couple more. Well, that's enough. Okay.
Not a lot of them.
Okay, so most of the cities I read is not the hood. Okay. All right. Okay, if y'all agree. So the reason why I read, you know what those are? Some of y'all already know. This is where the Kumon centers are. You know what Kumon is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Waiting lists, they are filled to capacity. Business is booming. Do you know what they sell at Kumon? Do you know how they teach? It's not the Montessori method. It is nuts and bolts, foundational skills. They paying big money.
Yep.
Not in the hood. Big money to give their children a foundation. What we sometimes debate about, oh, should we do science or reading? Should we do balanced literacy? Should we do units of study? And I guarantee you, Madam Superintendent, I know this is hard to believe, but there might still be a few teachers who are not quite all the way there yet. Not, just a few, not too many of them, though. Not too many of them. Every time an initiative happens, it's never 100% buy-in. There's some people who say, listen, I'm just going to let this play out. They're going to finish this. I'm going to close my door, do what I want to do. You know I'm telling the truth. Close my door and teach. This is just another fad, another trend. I got my 3 QN cards over there, and I'm going to do my thing. You know, that is real. Meanwhile, in Not the Hood, they're paying top dollar to give their children what they have a right to, which is a solid foundation. We have it within our disposal to do that for all children. Even if we don't pay that kind of money, the institution can set a good foundation. That's what this is all about. That this shouldn't be like I say, a form of apartheid, where the dividing line, where you're on that side and the line is money. Maybe not color, but it's money. That's the real color is green, right? That's what this is about. So for those who may not have bought in or who are still skilled, let me just tell you, money talks. They're not paying that money for a good time. They're paying it because they know there's power in a good foundation. There's power in foundational skills and literacy skills and numeracy skills, the basics to having a good foundation. That's what this is all about. So you're going to have to also wrestle with the culture piece of this on that wise, and that's not going to come just from the superintendent. That's got to be the folks in the schools saying, no, we're not moving like that. I know we used to do this together. I know we used to laugh at the principal when she would come and tell us this, but you know what? You either on the bus or you're off the bus. I'm on the bus. Our kids shouldn't have to go to wherever these places are to get a good foundation. That's what this is about. Okay,
I will say that in our community, we have a few programs that specifically tutor our children. We have New Haven Reads. We have Boundless Literacy.
That's right.
And we know that the children who go through those programs have success and learn to read. The issue is not enough are getting access to that. And I would just say that for those in the schools, when it is identified as a student is struggling with reading early on, they should be provided specific tutoring to address it before they continue to keep passing them on to other grades.
You know what? This is a big. Listen, you starting it right. Look. So in Mississippi, they did what you're talking about. They have what's called a 3rd grade gate, meaning when you're in 3rd grade and you can't read well enough, just at a basic level, you don't go in the 4th grade. They're gonna do some other stuff. They're gonna help you. They're gonna do meetings and they're gonna get a plan together and they're gonna do all this stuff so that you don't get held back. But what they have said is we're not going to just push them on anymore. No more social promotion. They actually hold back fewer kids now than they did before. Come find out that law really wasn't necessarily about the kids. It was about the adults. Because once they knew the repercussions and consequences of that, nobody wants their kids held back. Not on my watch. So now the adults are moving differently. Now the adults are doing all the things we probably should have been doing the whole time. But now with that on the line, you understand? Now, and so because what Madam President said here is that this, as a matter of civil rights, just passing the buck on, it's not okay. Right. There are some people who think that what you said and what Mississippi is doing is racist. They'll say, "Oh, well, you can't just hold back kids. You're gonna hold back the black kids. You're gonna." This is real, and they'll say you can't. That's discriminatory and all this type of stuff. And here, the civil rights community is saying, "Wait a second. What is you talking about that being an issue? The real issue is consigning our kids in the margins of society because we don't have the courage to do what they need to be done." So I'm so glad you said that. That you may not think that's a big deal. That's the community saying we've had enough. Stop it. We have to make sure that we are organizing ourselves as adults and moving in as adults in a way that's going to say, this is the line right here. And our kids are not, we love our kids too much. Enough is enough. We're going to stop it right here and address these issues before we go one step further.
Thank you. And you know, you're busting myths, both of you. First of all, the myth that there is no recourse for our children in our communities. There is recourse. There are things that are working. We're just not funding it enough so that we can break these cycles. And the other myth, I'll tell you, in one of these not the hood towns, I won't name it, but one of our not the hood towns, there was a superintendent who once said, "It is not in the DNA of our children to fail." Here in Connecticut. What he didn't say, based on what you said, it's not in my family's IRA for these children to fail. That's what he didn't say. But that's the dirty secret, and that is the myth, right, that is being perpetuated. So thank you for that. Thank you both for busting those myths. So I have questions from the audience. These are fun. So let's start with this one. So this is important, right, because a lot of the work that you did, Senator, and that you and your colleagues did was really to have approved programs in the state that were based on the science of reading. But of course, information and informants from community matter. And this question states the following. Currently, there are programs approved by the state of Connecticut that claim to be aligned to the science of reading. However, they contain harmful practices such as cueing, whole word memorization, and implicit learning of phonics skills. Are there plans to reevaluate, to come back to these programs, and do you have suggestions on what can be done in the meantime? So if there are districts out there that are compromising, how do we look back, how do we go back and make sure that they're doing the right thing, and what do we do in the meantime? If you're a teacher who's there, for instance, shout out to our teachers.
You're asking what can we do in the meantime?
How do we call them out, and how do we come back and make sure that there's accountability? I just read the question.
I mean, I don't mind answering it if y'all okay with that.
Yes.
Okay, so accountability. Let's just deal with accountability because that's sometimes a dirty word in education. Who gets called out? How they get called out? Who gets embarrassed and who gets blamed? And accountability. First of all, I want us to, as adults, to fade back. We got to fall back a little bit. We're so worried about accountability for us, we forget about accountability for the kids.
Yeah.
We just did this interview. It should come out this week. This is a podcast we started up with a guy named Amir Baraka and Dion Butler. These are two brothers. It's October's Dyslexia Awareness Month. I don't know if you know that or not. So both these brothers have dyslexia. One was in the NFL. He's a football player, but he couldn't read the playbook. So they had to cut him. He couldn't read you got to be able to, And then Amir, who's an Emmy nominated actor and all this, does great work. He's on television all the time and all this type of stuff. He went to prison, fully illiterate. And he learned to read while incarcerated, right? Listen to the story, he'll tell his own story, but the consequences, the accountability despite our uncomfortability and some misgivings and some reputational harms and whatever, man, that's not really accountability. That's a slap on the wrist. Accountability has been locked up in a cage, having to smear feces over your body to keep dudes off of you. That's accountability. Accountability is when you're close to being able to get your dream, but then you realize it was all just a shell game. You can't access, you can't read the playbook. Accountability is when the cortisol keeps pumping through your body because you're always on edge. You're in a constant state of fight or flight because you know that if you lose your job, you might not be able to get another one. So it weathers your internal organs and lowers your life expectation. Accountability. We sometimes we get caught up in our own stuff. Man, we living good, riding good, dressing good, looking good. Come on, mortgage is getting paid regardless. Apartment rent getting paid. It may take a couple jobs to do it, but it's getting paid. All right? Very few of us, some of us are, but very few of us are homeless. Couch surfing, living in an RV, or just out on the street. And we talk about, I'm afraid of accountability. Man, the kids are circling the drain. They're reaping the whirlwind because of our choices and our unwillingness, because of how hard it is to change with the best of intentions. So I just want to pivot accountability a little bit. But we got to cut it out. I'm not dismissing. It's fear. It's, you know, what do you do about the accountability of the person not doing this or that or what? Look, do what you got to do. There's a process in place. Go through the process. Grow people. You got to get on the bus or off the bus. And if they're on the bus, grow them, move them to a better place, lead, change management, all that. Like, you got to do your job. Madam or Mr. Administrator, do your job. Stop being scared to go in 17. Get you behind in 17, right? And as well, the change process, like that's the accountability. It's what you don't want to do. Here's the accountability for teachers. What you don't want to do is have a lifetime of remorse knowing that there are children we could have helped but didn't. That's accountability. And no teacher wants that. We want to change. Don't think teachers are not hiding their super secret teacher secrets for some political, most are not. They're doing the best they can. They need help. If by accountability you mean someone who's going to help me walk through this and going to give me some quality feedback so I can grow my practice, great, bring it on, all day long, right? But if it's just about pointing fingers, man, we got to change our mindset because really, the real accountability is lying with the kids, you know.
Thank you. And you know, there's a couple of questions from the audience that are kind of related. And one has to do with the role of the faith community, often has the direct pulse of families and communities right under their own pulpits. And secondly is the role of community itself. So in terms of the faith community, how can the faith community help mitigate illiteracy? And the faith community reminds us that there are parents that are struggling with reading too. So what is the role of family, community, and faith and how they come together in order to support what you're doing inside of the school building?
I'll take that one because just this afternoon before coming here, I was meeting with a pastor to talk about, you know, how may we partner? Because, right, church becomes part of a family's entity, just like school becomes part of a family's entity. So why not leverage the fact that we could align on efforts to ensure, again, that we're bringing strategies to families. So we're like brainstorming, if I have this vision, right, on how to equip my families to do little strategies at home that perhaps, right, that's also the same message that church could be giving to the families that attend. And also the fact that they have spaces, safe spaces, right, for after-school gatherings, or whether that be mentorship too that may want to come. There are a lot of people in our community that are invested and they just want to be able to give back. But again, it's I think we as a district have to think about, are we creating those opportunities for people that truly want to partner with us to be able to do that work? So I see it as, yes, how can I ask the faith community to help me? but how can I also help the faith community so that we're doing this work in partnership on behalf of kids.
That's great. You know, there's one more question here. Pardon me. And the question really is, what makes you hopeful about what's working? And then the other question is, for those adults in community who are not parents, how can they pitch in? How can they help make a difference? And I think both of those questions were also for you, Dr. Negron.
What makes me hopeful is when I look at, if I just take, for example, early childhood, we put a lot of investments last year to ensure that we were training, providing the professional learning to our teachers, and I have two of them here in the room that went through it. Training also the coaches to be able to support them. Invested in things like foundations and Haggerty. And when I hear them say, we see the impact, we are seeing it in terms of those early foundational skills that as we look at the early learning inventory, so we see it. But in order for us to see it, we have to be committed to the practice of, right, investing, fidelity of implementation, support, and then collecting the data to monitor, is it having an impact? And if it's not, what else do we have to offer that maybe we didn't offer? Or maybe it's time to pivot. So that makes me hopeful, because there's nothing a greater influence than a teacher saying, folks, this works. Right? I can say it till I'm blue, but if I get a teacher to say, this works, and look at the difference that it's making on my practice, look how my kids are growing, that's how I can get this to become part of our culture. So I am hopeful.
Dory, from the perspective of the NAACP, what makes you hopeful?
I'm always hopeful, and I'm a dreamer, and I do believe that collectively, with everyone who has an interest in this, we can, like I said, knowing what's happening and actually having action is two different things. So I think that I'm hopeful that we have best practices. I'm hopeful that we have examples, and I'm hopeful that we have the school districts, our policymakers, people who care, but most importantly, the parents and the people who are raising our children want better and are going to demand better. So I'm always hopeful that there's change and progress that could be made, and that more children will get the support, the help, the tutoring, and whatever is needed. And again, at an earlier level in their grades, like early education in kindergarten, before we get to the problem areas where now they are ashamed or they don't, now they're acting out. So just, I'm always hopeful.
And what a great segue, Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, I get to spend, unfortunately, I get to spend a lot of time with kids in this role. And I just believe in our young people. I think this generation that is coming up, it is such an interesting time where they are challenged with so many different things being thrown at them, advancements in technology, how they are learning. But I think it's just a really resilient generation, and I think it will continue to be. And I think that combined with a real shift, I think, from a policy perspective and interest in investing and understanding the importance of this. The other thing I will say in Connecticut, we have been able to lead the way on some of these really big changes because we've been able to build out really broad coalitions of people who come to the table. And so it's not just parents, it's not just educators, but in several of the policies that I've had the benefit of working on directly, it's been the faith community, it's been the business community that understands that this is a longer term investment in the state and in the future workforce. It is mayors and first selectmen, it's from both parties, frankly, but people coming to the table understanding that if we can't get on board with investing in our most precious asset, which is our kids, our future is not nearly as bright as it should be. So.
Thank you. I want to thank each of our panelists for joining us tonight. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. And Kareem, thank you for joining me as a co-panelist. And you know, it's clear that when our children are robbed of the right to read, we're not just denying opportunity, we're limiting participation, voice, and belonging. And this isn't just a film, it's a call to action. And it calls on all of us, and to your point, Kareem, educators, parents, policymakers, and neighbors, to make sure that every child in every corner of Connecticut, hood or not, to use your visualization, has those keys in their hand. So thank you for that. And to close tonight's program and issue that call to action, I am so honored to ask Dr. Margie Gillis, the president and founder of Literacy How, to take the mic.
Thank you.
May I borrow your mic? Thank you. There you are.
I will be brief, because we're over time. I just want to mention a couple things. First, thank you, Kareem, because you've set the stage in powerful, powerful ways. Do we love our kids enough? Do we?
Yes.
Please say it loud and clear. Yes. We have to keep kids at the center, always, because egos don't have room here. We have to put that to the test. And I think our panelists did a beautiful job talking about that, and it's emotional for me to think about that. The other thing that you said, Kareem, is language. I can't say that enough, because our kids are not using language. From birth all the way up, right? We're not talking to one another because we have devices in our hands all the time. Please leave tonight thinking about the model, you as a role model, as an adult. When you interact with children, put those devices down. I don't care what age those children are, but we need to be talking to our children and one another, and that is in short supply. Third, read. Read, read, and read carefully and closely. Marianne Wolf talks about the deep reading brain. We have to read critically. If we don't model that and do that, we're in trouble. So, last but not least, take this home. The back has wonderful resources. There are extra copies. Take 3 or 4, hand them out, and please take one of Kareem's cards. He put a lot of thought into those cards with those QR codes. Hand them out. And he shared with us earlier that there were 10 views on some of those ed reports, or not ed reports, what Ed Trust. Please take the time, because those success stories need to be shared. We know how to do this. We're just not doing it, but we know how. Please call you all to action, and thank you again for being.